We're talking emergency funds today, money in the bank that you can use in case something pops up, an emergency, and you need to get to some cash. A question I'm asked all the time is, how much money should you keep in an emergency fund? Another good question, is there such a thing as too much money in an emergency fund? And the answer is yes, there is. I'll tell you about that as well. Sit tight. Hi, I'm Antonio Cibella with Vision Wealth Management. I'm a financial advisor. I've got the YouTube channel here to answer questions that I get from clients all the time, and I share the answers with folks just like you who have an interest in this sort of thing. So today we're talking about emergency funds, money that you keep in the bank in case something comes up, an emergency, and you want to have money readily available. Everybody should have an emergency fund. How much you should have in the emergency fund depends on who you are and what your financial situation is. And so we're going to talk about that today. We're going to do a few things. One, we're going to talk about what an emergency fund is. Two, I'll give you my baseline answer for how much money you should keep in an emergency fund. I'll prove to you that there's such a thing as too much money in the emergency fund. And then last, we'll wrap up with a couple of different scenarios where I'll explain how you can move the number of what you should have up or down depending on how it might pertain to you, so that you can use that test for yourself to figure out how much money you really should be keeping readily available to you. So first up, real basic, what's an emergency fund and how much money should you keep in it? An emergency fund is really just a savings account, and it should probably be a savings account. I guess technically you could have an emergency fund that's like a shoebox full of money. I wouldn't do that. It's not going to earn anything, and if somebody finds your shoebox, you got big problems. So keep the money in the bank, keep it in a savings, maybe a money market account. If it's an FDIC insured money market account, it'll earn you some interest, it's readily available, and it doesn't fluctuate. It's going to be there in case you need it. So that's what an emergency fund is. How much do you keep in an emergency fund? My baseline answer, and we adjust up or down from here, is 6 months of your expenses. So think about what it takes to keep the train on the tracks. You get a mortgage payment, maybe you have rent, car payments, gas, groceries, a little bit of entertainment. What's that all add up to in a month? $3,000, $4,000, $6,000? I've seen people who have expenses $20,000, $30,000 a month. That's fine if you got the income to afford it. But here's the thing, keep about 6 months of that sitting in the bank. So let's say as a round number, it costs $5,000 a month. $30,000, good start to, I've got an emergency fund, and if something comes up, I'm gonna have the money to be able to use it. Now, as I said, sometimes you need more, sometimes you need less, and I'll give you a couple of examples on that in just a second here. Before I do that, I want to show you that there's such a thing as too much money in the emergency fund. And I'll show it to you this way. So I'm going to throw this graphic up on the screen. This is the return of different asset classes going all the way back to 1987. 1987, had to double check that. From 1987 to present, you can see that cash grew, but really it only grew at about the pace of inflation. The money didn't truly grow for you. And at the end of all of that time, you ended up with $10,000 growing into $29,000, or about $30,000. Now, had that money been invested in almost any form of diversified stocks, so we've got small cap stocks, the general stock market, and large cap stocks represented here, you can see that all of them grew to over $300,000. Now, that's a 30-plus year example, so that obviously is pretty extreme for what we're talking about here, but you get the point. Too much money sitting in the bank, more than what you would need, can actually negatively impact you in the long run. So if you just allow the savings to build up and build up and build up, and it's way beyond what you would need for an emergency fund, and you don't have another specific use for the money, you're not doing yourself a solid when it comes to the long term. If it's invested money, if it's money that should be invested, if it's long-term money, invest it appropriately for you, but invest it and let it grow, because other assets over time have been proven to out-earn the return on cash. So you don't want to have all of your money just sitting in the bank earning interest, even if interest rates are higher right now than they've been for some time. Hey, if you're having a good time watching the video and you enjoy what you're watching, go ahead and click the button and subscribe to the channel, because if you do, you'll get notified when we put new stuff out. I try to get 1 to 2 things out per week. It's all about retirement, financial planning, taxes, money in the bank, all that sort of stuff. I hope to see you again. One quick note that I hit on there is an emergency fund is money in the bank. You can have money in the bank for other reasons. You can have money in the bank because you're saving for a car, you're saving down payment for a house, you've got money that you're going to use to pay for some college tuition in a year or two, or for your daughter or son's wedding. Whatever the case may be, you can have other bank money And if there's a use for it and it's a shorter time frame, you probably should keep it in the bank, but that's still separate from emergency fund money. It doesn't literally have to be in a different bank account, but be aware that you shouldn't tap into the emergency fund to pay for a large expense that you can see coming. If you can see it coming, start setting aside money separately for that. And that's probably, if it's in the near term, not money that should be invested in something like the stock market, because as we know, that fluctuates. It goes up and down, and you wouldn't want to have money fluctuating and then you needed to go get it, and now all of a sudden you can't buy the house because you go like, well, the market's down, we don't actually have the down payment, cancel the purchase agreement, it's just not going to work out. Nobody wants that to happen. Don't let that happen. Set aside that money separately, but set it aside in the bank in something that lives like this. But it's different than emergency fund money because that's not an emergency. That's something that you're saving for. Now, I told you I'd go over a couple of examples. I'm going to do that right now. This is something, again, that I would apply when sitting down with a client and building a financial plan for them. So I'll give you 2 examples. Let's say that we've got Tyler. Tyler's 40 years old. He's a father of 2. He's married. He's the sole income for his household. And we're going to ramp the stakes up a little bit more as far as it comes to the emergency fund. His income is commission. So his income fluctuates. It goes up and down. Let's say that they've got $5,000 a month in expenses. Is 6 months worth of money really enough for him? Probably not. It's still good, but if he were my client, I'd tell him he probably should try to get closer to 12 months, and there's a couple of reasons. Multiple things can go wrong here. He's the only income. So if anything happens to him, there is 0 income. It's not a 2-income household, so there's a little bit of added risk there. He could get hurt or injured and not be able to work. Depending on if he has disability insurance, that can blow a hole in things. He could lose his job. Something can happen. He could be fired. Who knows? And the income goes away. And again, now you've got nothing coming in. So he's got far more risk. And then you add the commission piece. He might just have a bad month, and maybe he doesn't make enough then to pay the bill. So he needs to tap into the emergency fund to kind of keep things afloat until he has a better month and he can replenish it. So for somebody like that, you might want to get closer to a full year's worth of expenses sitting in the savings account. On the other end of the spectrum, let's talk about Bob and Judy. Bob and Judy are my favorite hypothetical retirement couple. If you watch my videos, I'm always talking about Bob and Judy. Bob and Judy, let's say that they're both retired. They've got a pension coming in, a couple of Social Security checks maybe. Let's say that they have $5,000 a month in income coming in between pension and Social Security. And let's say that they have $3,000 a month in expenses because everything's paid off. And so it doesn't cost them a whole lot to stick around. Well, they're actually net positive, and they're net positive on guaranteed retirement income sources. You can't get fired from Social Security. And so you don't have to worry about losing your job. You don't have to worry about getting hurt and not having income coming in. They've got far less risk in their income than Tyler did. We'd want to plan for some things. What happens if one of them passes away? What happens to the income there, etc. But they don't need 12 months of expenses in the emergency fund. They might not actually even need 6. Now, if 6 was comfortable to them, fine, so be it. You're not going to harm yourself keeping 6 months of your expenses sitting in the bank ready to go, even if it's unlikely that you would need to access that much money. You get in trouble when all of a sudden it starts to be 20, 30, 40, 50% of your investment portfolio is just sitting there in cash inside of the bank. But for Bob and Judy, far less is needed. They might even want to go all the way down to 3 months. And so in my mind, at least as an advisor, I always tell folks, probably no more than 12 unless there was a really strange circumstance, no less than 3 months, because at that point you run the risk of something comes up and it's unforeseen, and now you've got to go tap into the investments. And again, investments generally live like this, and if there's a time when the investments are down and you need to liquidate them because you didn't have a good plan in place, it can be a painful thing. You don't want to sell your assets when they're on sale. So 3 months to 12 months in the emergency fund is a really good range, and then you find where you belong inside of that range. So we've talked a lot about investments in this video, even though it's not an investment video. We're talking about money in the bank. If you're interested in more information about investments, click that right there. It's our investment playlist. You can check out some of our other videos. I'll see you again soon.